Reading and interpreting right-of-way maps. Over the years, ODOT's maps and drawings have gone from being hand drafted on waxed linen to being produced electronically by computer. Even though the method of producing the maps has changed over the years, the drafting standards used for these drawings have remained fairly constant. Some of the standards have evolved, though, to fit changing times. The following slides will review the drafting standards in use on right-of-way maps today and historically, and show how to interpret those maps. We'll start with the modern right-of-way maps. Since our acquisitions are based on the center line, you're going to see center lines on the maps. There are two types that we predominantly use, the primary center line and secondary center line. There will be only one primary center line on a map. This is used to display the main alignment of the project, and all the other center lines on there that we're acquiring from will be a secondary center line. Now, the center lines are common. You're going to see bearing text, coordinates for the PIs. A little dotted line is called a PI reference. You see that a little later on. They're all common fonts between the center lines. Now, the main difference between the primary center line and the secondary center lines is the thickness of the line. The primary center line, being a more important line, is going to be thicker. It's going to have a heavier weight than the secondary center lines. Now, there's a third center line. You find this on the drafting task menu, and that's a jurisdictional transfer center line. And we use that for our JT exhibits. That's produced by headquarters when we transfer a highway to another agency, a city, or a county. It's also used for survey approval maps, but you will not see that on a standard right-of-way map. Now, existing lines, we have existing right-of-way and property lines. Those are a solid line. The subdivision lot lines are medium dash and a short dash. We have existing access control. That's an important line to understand, and it's a fairly long dash with a short dash. And then railroad right-of-way line, that's even longer dash with two short dashes. Now, our existing right-of-way and property lines are shown with a lighter weight. They're thinner lines and corresponding taking lines. Now, our right-of-way drawings emphasize what is being purchased rather than what is existing. That's an important fact to understand. Now, other things you see on the right-of-way maps, of course, there's ownership text, and you see that with the grantor's name and their deed reference. Below that, you see property hooks. Now, on the right, that's called full hook. That's a hook that shows that there's common ownership across a deed boundary. On the left, we call that the half hook, and that shows common ownership on each side of, say, a road, a river, maybe an adjoining property. All our monuments that you see are just a circle monument, open one for found monuments, and it will usually have a number associated with it. That's the point number, the number that was assigned when it was tied in the field. In the bottom center, GPS points. That would be a monument, either set or found, that was used to get control by GPS observations. And of course, on the bottom right is the section corner. You do have the monument circle symbol, and then you have the section numbers around it. Now, monuments, you're going to have descriptive text with each monument. Shows what was found and gives coordinate values and a date. Now, the description text may be placed near the monument, either right adjacent to it or maybe just right off to the side, but still in the same vicinity as that monument. And again, we have the point number, say with the text, if it's a ways from the monument, what it is, like found iron pipe, the date that it was tied in the field, the coordinates of that particular monument, and then usually we would put a reference to the county survey from which that monument was set. Now, another way of grouping these, the description text may be grouped together and placed in an area that's well away from the monuments. Could be the top border or the bottom border, be grouped in one spot on the map. Or the monument text may be in a table, and this is the most common way that it's being done now. It's easy they can pull the table out of the recovery survey and just paste it in the map. So you just have everything in a table. Okay, some other lines. These are government lines. We have city limits. So the city limit line, it looks like an access control line, but it has this dot pattern associated with it. Now, sometimes the dot pattern will be by itself, and that is used when the city limits falls along another boundary line, such as a donation land claim or a section line. Important thing to remember is the dot pattern is on the city side of the line. Below that, we have county lines and state line. So state lines, not going to see those too often on our right-of-way maps, but occasionally we'll have them there. Okay, donation land claims. That is a solid thin line with a thick hash, and the hash or dash for the DLC is going to be placed on the land claim side of the line. So on the left here, you have the Adams DLC number 37 on, say, the north, but south of that would be a government lot. On the right, we have a boundary with two land claims. So we got the Adams on the north and the Smith DLC on the south. Okay, township lines, very thick line. Section lines, going to be a little thinner. A quarter section line is a very long dash with a short dash in between. And then your 16th section or government lot line is kind of a medium long dashed line. And then in the center of section, you're going to see a circle, and that will have the section number within the circle. That indicates the center of a section. Okay, back to alignments and how you see the alignments. With an English alignment, what we have here is you have tangents with a curve in between them. So we have tangent coming in, the curve, and this will be a simple curve with curve data. You're going to see the curve data usually shows the degree of curve, the delta angle, tangent or semi-tangent. That would be from the start of the curve to the PI being where the two tangents intersect. We usually have coordinates on the PIs, and of course tangents going out. And then we have the station ticks. So with the English alignment, stationing is going to be 2 digits past the plus symbol there. And the station ticks are spaced 100 feet apart with 500-foot spacings between the major ticks. Coordinates usually expressed to the 100th of the foot. Sometimes you see with English alignments the coordinates on the PIs to 3 digits rather than, to 1,000th rather than 100th of a foot. Now, on the modern maps, the stationing faces the direction that the alignment is increasing. Older maps, it's going to be reversed. We changed that in probably the early to mid 1990s. We're producing creating these alignments with software, and they were displayed in our CAD file, and that was the default, was to have that station direction, the station face the direction that the alignment is running. The older maps, I said, was reversed. If you think about it, most people are right-handed, and that's how it was easier for them to draft them that way. Okay, now metric alignments, we do not do metric drawings anymore, metric projects. There was about a 10-year period that we were, so there are maps, metric maps out there. The difference between metric alignments and English alignments, for one, the stationing is 3 digits to the right of the plus symbol. The station ticks are spaced 20 meters apart, and there's 100 meters spacing between the major ticks. The coordinates usually are expressed to the millimeter. That would be 3 digits. Sometimes you will see 4 digits on the coordinates for the PI stations. The reason that they want that extra digit, both on the metric and the English, was for rounding errors. And again, on the modern maps, station faces the direction that the alignment is increasing. But basically, you're going to have the same look of alignments. Your bearings, your control flags, the PC, PT, coordinate, curve data, so forth. Okay, again, the current method of showing alignments on ODOT drawings is for the stationing to increase from left to right and the station text to face the direction that the alignment runs. Now, ODOT standards for alignments for stations is to increase north to south, west to east, but some alignments don't follow that rule. Stationing for English alignment shown to the 100th of a foot. Coordinates are shown to 3 decimal places on the PIs, sometimes 2. And metric stationing is shown to the millimeter. Coordinates are shown to 4 decimal places, but sometimes they just show it to 3 to the millimeter. Okay, now we're into our taking lines, our proposed taking lines. So we have easements, the little dotted or dashed line there, proposed permanent and temporary easements. Proposed fee taking line is a solid line. Access control line, the same line style as with existing. And the bottom left there kind of shows a general depiction of how you see that on the map with your taking line. We have a fee take and an easement, and then how we show the station and offsets to the new taking lines. Now, proposed taking lines are shown with a greater weight. They're thicker than the corresponding existing lines. And the reason for this is our right-of-way drawing emphasizes what is being purchased rather than what is existing. Okay, general arrangement on the map. We'll have down on the bottom, we have the file number. Now, the file number, the right-of-way file number actually is 7 digits. It has a 4-digit project number with a 3-digit sequential number. Now, on the map, we only show the 3-digit sequential number. The right-of-way project, all the files are going to have the same project number, so we don't need to show it along with the sequential numbers, and it saves space. Sometimes it gets really tight with spacing on these maps. So after the property has been acquired and recorded in the county, we will come back and draft in the acquisition deed number. It can be an instrument number, book and page, microfilm, whatever the various county uses. We call that deed recording. Now, within our taking, we show the parcels. You have a parcel number, which is a number within a circle bubble, and the area of that taking. So here we have parcel 1. That would be a fee take, and it was 3,047 square feet, plus or minus. We always show our acquisition, the area text, as more or less, plus or minus. Parcel 2 is a permanent easement for slopes. We label our easements on there, and you can see that's 2,285 square feet. The fee taking line is an access control line. Notice that. And so we acquired the rights of access and we granted a reservation of access. So that reservation point symbol has A, indicates access, gives a station, 10 plus 50, and a width of the driveway or the approach, which is 30 feet. Now this is granted to the grantor, this reservation, and that's where they can apply for a permit to build a driveway. Okay, we have the grantor's name, John Q. Public, and his vesting deed number, book 123, page 456, and the remainder area. In this case, it's 22,219 square feet, and it says left, so that's left to center line. Now, a lot of times we acquire excess property, say the grantor will buy out all his entirety, and so we can sell that. And there's a lot of proposed sales. So when it's proposed, a description is written, and then we would pencil in to be sold. That's drafted on the map. A lot of times the older ones, it was just penciled on the hard copy. Nowadays, we would just put to be sold and draft that and place it into CAD. And they did the description. And this indicates that a sale is in progress. It doesn't mean that it has been sold. You're going to see a lot of to be sold potential sales on the old right-of-way maps, and they never went through. But when the sale is concluded, we go ahead and the grantee's name and the sale deed recorded deed information is placed on the map, and we put a heavy dashed line around the perimeter of the sale boundary, and that indicates that that's been sold. Okay, topography symbols. So we have common utility lines and symbols. There's a lot of them there. So your utility lines, they're identified nowadays as either being underground or above ground with a U or an A. Usually has a little bit of text indicating what it is, like TV, fiber optic, telephone, electric, gas, water. So pipes, small parallel dashed lines, power poles, with different types of poles out there. We have a power pole, joint use pole, just plain telephone pole. Anchor symbols are the same with any sort of pole. We have a wood pole, steel pole, Bonneville Power Administration power poles. Luminaire kind of looks like a light shining. Valves, different. We have valves, junction boxes, meters, hydrants, manholes, inlets, risers, vents, cleanouts. Now, got to remember is like a valve, a meter, junction box that could serve different types of utilities. So you may see a junction box symbol there, but you have to look to see which utility it actually is associated with. Okay, other topography features, ditches, both small, large ditches, pipes with paved end slope. You have that little triangle symbol there on the end for a paved end slope for a pipe. If a pipe's been abandoned, it will show it with a squiggly line through it. Edge of water is just a solid line. Ordinary high water line has its own little line style. The center of the stream, the thaw wag, has its own little line style. Wetlands and ponds. Now, wetland, it's pretty indicated. It looks like little bunches of grass that you would find growing around a swampy area. A pond, now the little triangle symbols on the pond would point into the water. Berms, fence, that's pretty standard fence symbol. Gates, we have just standard gate or lock gate. Walls, brush line, tree line. We show the different types of trees, whether it's a coniferous tree or a deciduous tree. Barriers, solid like concrete barrier, cable barrier has its own line style. Guardrail has its own line style, same with a median guardrail, say in the middle of the freeway. Handrails, curb gutter, concrete, edge asphalt, edge gravel. Those are important ones right there that indicates the extent of our actual road facility, you know, the edge of asphalt or edge of gravel, and of course, railroad track. Now, color shading of the acquisition parcels, this helps define the takings, and the standard is to use different colors for the adjoining properties. Now, this is something we started, I don't know, past 5 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. Some of the older CAD maps, you won't see this, but we're doing it now. It's something that used to be done on the older maps, and you'll see it when we get into the older maps. But this really helps out identify, number one, the different takings we have, different properties, and what we're taking. So fee takings are shaded with a solid color. Permanent easements have a solid outline around the parcel. And temporary easements are outlined around the parcel with a dashed line. So there's our modern right-of-way map. It has mirror text on each end, has a front title area, the map body, and it has an end title area. So the mirrored text, until just very recently, these mirrored titles are placed at each end of the map. And this will be allowing for a Mylar copy that was printed out to be easily identified when it was rolled up. Now, we don't produce hard copies, official hard copies of the maps anymore. So we've actually eliminated putting the mirrored text on. So you won't see that on the current right-of-way maps that are being plotted. So the front title area, some different sections in that. So the front title, of course, identifies that as Oregon Department of Transportation. This is a located line map. It has the project name. Now that's on the right-of-way map, that's the project name for the project. Same name you're going to see on the contract plans. Identifies the highway. In this case, it's the Salem-Dayton Highway, the county, who the drafter is. It has bearing information, coordinate information, and field notes with the field note number. Gives the drawing number, the right-of-way project number. This is one of the first places you're going to see the right-of-way project number on the map. And we have identifying yes, this is an access control line symbol. That's an important line style to understand. And then we have the CAD file name that was used to produce this right-of-way map and scale bars. Okay, there's a little area that shows revision history of the map. We have mostly it's a table format now. Earlier we would just draft our names, penciling in on the older maps, and who did the revision and a short description of what that revision entailed. And you will see in this area a status stamp showing what the status of this map is. Now there are 3 status stamps: preliminary, active, and right-of-way. Preliminary drawing, probably won't see that on too many maps that you would pull out a file net. This was used before the map was officially published. So let's say that writer has maybe 10, 15 files done. We have a large project. He just plots out a quick copy to hand to maybe the appraiser or someone in the region needs to use it for their work. And so he puts the preliminary drawing stamp on there. And it just says that the right-of-way necessary to support the project design has not been fully determined. Once descriptions are written for all the files, everything's laid out, then the map is officially published, goes on the FileNet, and the preliminary drawing, if it was placed, is replaced with an active drawing stamp. And this says that the drawing shows the proposed right-of-way needed to be acquired to support the project design. Does not necessarily indicate that we bought that. This is what we're working on to buy. Now, once all the properties have been acquired, the project's done, gone through and did all the deed recording, we put the acquisition deed reference down, and then the active drawing stamp is replaced with right-of-way drawing, and it says that the right-of-way shown on this drawing was acquired through the conveyance documents listed, but may be subject to change due to future acquisitions or sales. All three of these stamps, someplace says subject to change, indicates that this map is not a final product, and it does change. Okay, on the front title area, you will have a basis of bearing insert. This is a simple schematic showing the relationship of the project alignments to the base of bearing of the project. Now, within the map body, up on the top, you're going to see spaced about every 36 inches along the map is going to be some text that shows the township and range and section, the drawing number, and right-of-way project number, and if there's any prior right-of-way maps that will be placed there about every 3 feet along the map as it is plotted. Also spaced about every 36 inches or so is the north arrow. Shows due to the orientation of the map and the direction of the alignment, north may not be pointing straight up and down on the map as you're looking at it. North points north. Okay, the end title area, kind of abbreviated. Again, it shows the project name, highway, county, what type of map, located line, scale, drawing, and project number. That's your basic map. Now, existing topography used to be with the CAD work up until the mid 1990s. We would take the topography and selectively edit, clip out portions of that, so all our taking text would not be just blotted out. Well, starting in probably, I think it was the mid 90s, we came up with a system by which we just pull it in as a reference file, and it would be shaded, halftone, so the topography would drop down. We no longer went in and edited this stuff. This was requested by the right-of-way agents because we delete out sometimes topographical information they needed to know to appraise and acquire the property. So we had to come up with a way to leave it all in, but not blot out all our taking stuff. So this gray shading works pretty good. So on the map, you may see some, with our taking lines, some dotted lines coming down, say it comes out into a side street. And those are known as false call lines, and we would use those in the variable width strip taking. Now, you don't need to show a false call line when the taking is a constant with strip. Okay, here, acquisition. Now, this is an area, a file that we acquired the entire property. So file 59 is total taking of the property, and it was broken down into 4 parcels. So parcel 1 was a fee taking. Parcels 2 and 3 were permanent easements. Parcel 4 was an entire taking of the remainder of the property, also a fee taking. And note that the remainder includes the easements that we described in parcel 2 and 3. So that's the preferred method if we're going to buy the entire piece of property. You describe what we need for the project, and then we have excess. Now, another way of doing it is of entire taking is just by deed reference. And so files 1 and 2 were identified early on as relocations, and the descriptions were prepared before the design was finalized. We had relocations, hardship case, they needed to acquire this right at the start, but the project design wasn't completed. We actually didn't know where the final location of the center line or taking, so we just did it by deed reference. Now, so we have excess, we can sell it. Portions of the excess from this file, along with an adjacent file, is being sold. Now the arrows indicate the boundaries of the proposed sale. So when we sell, we can combine multiple files, portions of multiple files, into a sale parcel. Now, these 4 acquisitions involve purchasing the access rights to the grantor's remaining property. So, if fee taking is not part of the acquisition, then the access rights taken with an access-only parcel. So, file 65 actually has a little triangle fee taking, but we wanted to buy up the rights to access to their entire frontage on the highway. So, we have that 2 parcels, fee and a temporary easement. Now 66, 61, and 67, we had just easement acquisitions, but also buying the rights of access. So we did that with a parcel that was an access-only parcel. Okay, acquired access rights can be bound by an engineer station rather than apply to the entire frontage of the property. You see a little perpendicular hash there. It's known as a access control stopper, and it has a station. So when we acquired the access rights, it was bound by that station. Normally, they would do that. In this case, on the left, they had a driveway there going into this grantor's property. They didn't want to, this was a city street, didn't want to get in the reservation process, so we bound it by station there. Okay, cancellations. So files 1 and 23 have been canceled. All the taking lines and the text have been removed, leaving just the file number, and we put a line through it indicating the cancellation. So that's the standard thing. We take out all the taking information. Just leave the file number saying, yep, we had a file here, we had something. You could go back and actually pull up that file and see what was proposed to go on. Now note, if you're doing research on our highway, on each side of files 1 and 23, you notice an access control line. So we acquired from the adjoining properties, and we acquired their rights of access. But we didn't, since we canceled 1 and 23, whatever existing access rights they had still apply. All right, look for areas where we have surplus properties been sold, and we use this heavy red dashed lines drawn around the sale boundary, indicates that we have sold it. Now, jurisdictional transfers or relinquishments to cities and counties is treated the same as a surplus property sale, and we will put that heavy dashed line around it. And of course, in this case, the reference, it doesn't say sold to, it says relinquished. This was a relinquishment to Clackamas County. So when the map has got to the status of right-of-way drawing, the county deed recording information of the acquisitions is placed near the file numbers or within the purchase area. So you see here, this is a county that uses microfilm. So deed MF for microfilm and 91-028331. That was for file 2. Now you notice over here on file 27 on the left it has, there's a number, it says J C91-0599CV. That is a court judgment. This file went in the condemnation proceedings, and they have a stipulated judgment. When the judge signed that judgment, that's when we acquired the property. Now, there's underneath that, you also see a microfilm document number. This judgment was then recorded with the county clerk and given a microfilm document number. This is being done today. All the judgments, right-of-way section will send them in and record them. That's not always the case. So if you're looking at an old right-of-way map and you want to pull up and get copies of the recorded deeds, if it only has a judgment number, county clerk more than likely will not have that. You have to go to the court records to get that. Okay, occasionally we'll have a taking in an area where there's not a purchase center line and the acquisition can be described by meets and bounds, parallel lines, or other acceptable methods. And in this case here, we could have described it in reference to the subdivision lot corner. Now, rural projects, generally less complex than urban projects, and they have larger takings. But the gray shading is still important, maybe even more important. In this case, we have an orchard there, and it would just block out everything if the gray shading wasn't applied. Dimension arrows can be handy. You see that. In this case, parcel 2 used a dimension arrow. That was for a wetland site. Or it could just been a remainder, and it indicates the extent of that purchase. Now, today, with the use of color shading, the shading makes it more helpful to identify the different parcels. You can more easily see between parcel 1 and parcel 2, more easily defined. So some maps, right-of-way takings extend beyond the width of the map and requires breaking an area and creating a match line. So the match line is given a name, commonly A-A or B-B, etc. And this corresponding area is placed at another place on the map, quite often at the end of the map, and it's in an insert. So here on the main body of the map, you see C insert match line view AA, and then in another spot, you see that match line view AA. Okay, now we're going to get into the older right-of-way maps. The older maps, prior to CAD, were hand drafted in ink. Most were drafted on waxed linen. Some of the later ones were drafted on mylar. I've actually done some drafting on waxed linen, and I applaud those old drafters. That's very difficult media to work with. Drafting standards, though much the same as today, have evolved over the decades, and there are some differences. Now, prior to the implementation of the right-of-way project number, Every file was given an unique file number. Now, the main file contains all the information on the acquisition. In addition to the main file, we had a separate RW file number was assigned to this acquisition, and that was an abbreviated file, containing copies of the recorded warranty deed, title report, some correspondence. So there's the older main right-of-way file. It is referred to as the salmon file. All these files have been scanned. They had hundreds of thousands of files. They were scanned and been put in the FileNet. There's our abbreviated file and has the RW number to it. It's a different file number than the main file. Now, shading or outlining of the acquisition parcels was also used on the older linen maps and was done with colored pencils. Different colors were used to define the takings from the different properties involved. Purple, though, that was a color that was usually reserved to indicate surplus property that was sold. So a typical hand-drafted linen map. Note the shaded parcels. There's shaded parcel. We have the main file numbers. 38957 is the main file. There's our secondary right-of-way file number, which is 27577. We have the acquisition deed number, book 618, page 5. We have the grantor's name, R. Morrison, and the grantor's deed reference. This is book 30, page 343. The acquisition area, 600 square feet, and the remainder area, 10,200 square feet. Typical hand-drafted right-of-way map. Another main difference in standards on the older maps was the way the access rights were shown. The access control line in use today was not used on maps prior to the 1960s. There's no real hard date. They kind of just slowly phased out the old system, went into the access control line. So they did have a symbol indicating the type of access rights acquired, and that was drafted within the parcel. Now, various symbols were used. They had RA for restricted access, FX for farm crossing, A for access, PA for private access, PAL for private access limited, CA was a commercial access, and CAL commercial access limited. They had a stamp, and this would be stamped on the front of the map. You'd see this little stamp with that legend on there. So even after the access control line style was adopted, and this was, in the 60s, they started adopting the access control line style. They still use the symbols. So here we go. You can see the access control line style there. We have a reservation access flag with an A, just access. But you still see the RA, restricted access symbols, within the acquisition. So both roll maps and 1R sheet maps were produced then. We had the A maps, 36 inches in width. The B maps were 24 inches in width. There was a C map. That was 12 inches in width. And then the 1R3 maps were 12 by 24, and the 1R4 maps were 12 inches by 18. There actually was 1R1 through 1R5 maps. They were used for different things. And some of the sizes were on the 1R1, 2, and 5. Usually they were 12 by 18. Sometimes they're a little bit different. So there are two basic types of roll maps that were produced, and that is the constructed line and the located line. Now, constructed line maps. These were mostly done at a scale of 1 inch equals 400 feet, though some were drafted at an inch 100. The highway right-of-way and right-of-way widths may or may not be drafted on these constructed line maps. If they are, there is no documentation of how the widths of the right-of-way were obtained. Because of this, the constructed line maps are generally not considered to be a right-of-way map in that they were not produced to facilitate the acquisition of right-of-way. However, right-of-way files for quarry sites, stockpile sites, parklands, they were often drafted on the maps and they were cross-referenced to a 1R map. So basically, constructed line map shows the alignment of the highway at the time the map was drafted. Any use of the map for other than the historical alignment or research into any right-of-way files shown should be approached with caution. So, typical inch 400 constructed line map. Title area is pretty much the same as the other maps, but it says constructed line rather than located line. But it has the section name, the highway, the county, scale, the date it was drafted. In this case, it was drafted in October of 1931, and the drawing number 4B-4-3. Now, there are files drafted on it. This is a right-of-way file for a maintenance site. The file number is M-89, but it has a reference to 1R map, 1R1-360. Another part of the map, you see a right-of-way file for widening. So here we have right-of-way file RW-485, but it has a reference to a 1R map, in this case 1R1-1065. So now we get into located line maps. The located line maps show the new right-of-way layout, right-of-way file numbers, areas of the taking, the grantor's name, and deed recording. These are the true right-of-way map, is the located line maps. So, typical located line map. It says located line, but it has the project section name, Mount Angel to Silverton section. The highway is the Silverton, Hillsborough-Silverton Highway in Marion County. We have a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet. Drafter's initials, JWC, was done in March 1964. Bearing information, drawing number. Now, you see these in a lot of the old Linden maps. Right here, it says note, set pin indicates set capped right-of-way pin with iron post and paddleboard. Set mon indicates a brass disc in concrete monument with iron post and paddleboard. And it's stamped by resident engineer. Now, this was done back in that time period. We were not required to file a monumentation survey with the county. We would go out, set monuments on our required right-of-way. They were then drafted on the map. The resident engineer would stamp it, and we'd send a copy to the counties. So there you go, monument set after the project completion. Those are noted on the map. Set pin, set pin. So other things you may see on the right-of-way map. Here's a reference for a highway designation. It says designated as highway number 140 and designation file number 78. So highway 140, the Hillsborough-Silverton Highway, comes down 1st Street, down C Street, up, I believe that's Front Street, and then goes into Water Street. Now also, you see a little note here on water. It says abandoned the city, A&R 422, and it's lined out. That indicates that the A&R was canceled at some point. Copies of this map that were sent to the county or copies that the region offices may have may not show this. So you should always be getting a copy of the right-of-way map from Map and Plans. In headquarters here, we have the most up-to-date copy of all the maps. So revision dates, they're drafted within the front title area. At that time, they didn't have a table that we use like we use now. So this map, 6B-14-3, was drafted originally in March of 1945. It was revised in February of 1954, revised again in November of 1981, then again in September of 2000, March and May 2002, and then at the time this slide was made, July of 2003. So you can see that these maps are truly a living document. They change over the decades. So here's a reference to an adjoining map. Just says C7B-24-8. Doesn't really indicate what it was, but since the map here is 7B-24-9 and part 2 of 2 parts, one would assume that this 7B-24-8 is most likely part 1 of 2. So note the access control and reservation access symbols. So we have RA, restricted access, and we have reservation symbols. Private access, commercial access, the private access limited actually, commercial access limited. There's no access control line style, so these are the only indications on the map that access rights were acquired. This map predates the access control line style. So I mentioned purple was reserved to show sales. Here was a sale we had, surplus property sale, and it's shaded in purple. Now, we have dimensions from the center line, and that defines new right-of-way line right in this area. We have a width of 66.96 feet. Now, down here on file 22032, the new right-of-way was not acquired with reference to the center line. Note, we have distance calls from and along the existing right-of-way. So if you were going to go out and try to resolve this right-of-way, you would first have to resolve the original existing center line and existing right-of-way. So reference for another map says C1A-22-28 for additional right-of-way. What that additional right-of-way is, I'm not sure. We have a railroad there. Notice the railroad track line style. Could be it was a railroad encroachment. Also, we have penciled information crops up on these maps. Right above that note for the additional right-of-way, you see penciled in C5C-17-7. What that is, not sure, but you can pull it up and take a look at it. So here we have a reference for a railroad encroachment map. At this time period, we would have a regular located map, and if we had an encroachment, we would do a separate railroad encroachment map. Now it shows the encroachment easement document, RR 673, and that's in the RR file, available from the ODOT History Center in Salem. Actually, you can pull off a file net. So there's various information, maybe penned in different locations along the map. On here has a note, construct the line shown in red. Another note, right-of-way is shown on this map was acquired by resolution by Clackamas County, parentheses, except as otherwise indicated. Below that, the center line of the strip acquired by resolution is shown by a heavy solid black line. Later revision shown by lighter broken line and curved data, therefore, is indicated first rev. Line is finally constructed, shown by a solid line, red on the tracing, and curb data designated constructed line. So a lot of information. This map here, side note, this is probably the longest map that was ever done. It's over 70 feet long. It was drafted in December of 1925. So this is the same map, different area, different notes. Notes detail information about the various center lines drafted and how the original right-of-way was acquired, such as original 80-foot right-of-way from Station 27 to Station 220 plus 4624, acquired by resolution in 1925, and it gives a right-of-way file number, file 4355. Above that, find this an interesting note. As far as can be ascertained at this time, November 1949, the actual center line of the territorial road was not determined in connection with right-of-way acquisition from the 1946 relocated center line. The bearing is south 0 degrees 31 minutes 30 seconds east may or may not be correct. So, another area of the map, we have 3 separate center lines, maybe 4 center lines, and all were used acquire something. So even though with a good knowledge of the standards used through the ages, sometimes a map is just going to be difficult to read and interpret. Okay, this concludes reading and interpreting right-of-way maps. For more information on the right-of-way maps and right-of-way engineering in general, refer to the Right-of-Way Engineering Manual available on the ODOT website.